The Bisett family. James Bisett came to the United States from Ireland. He was from the Dublin area. He and Mary Clark, also from Ireland, became married. I don't know if in Ireland or USA. Mary Clark's brother, Thomas Clark, lived in New York. I think probably they were married in New York. They moved to Elliottcotville. James Bisett got a job working for a Mr. Devereaux, who had a series of trading posts from Canada down into Pennsylvania. This is the same Mr. Devereaux that gave the land to the Franciscans where St. Bonaventure College stands. When I was a student, I lived in Devereaux Hall. This was either early Civil War time or before. After a while in Elliottcotville, Bisett moved to Tarport. It is now East Bradford, Pennsylvania. There was a sawmill and a small settlement along Tunnawat Creek. After a little time here, Bisett acquired some land at Dallas Center, about 4 miles up a tributary of this creek, where there was also a sawmill and a little settlement building. By this time, the Bisetts had a developing family. They maintained and became quite self-supporting on this farm. In this development, they produced 9 boys and 5 girls. That was in the days when big families were the rule. Every hand, as it developed, was taught to help out. The family progressed and prospered on those rolling acres. James and Mary Bisett must have been pretty good managers as well as breeders. They were able to stock the farm and acquire teams of horses. So as the boys developed, they became productive teamsters in the growing lumber business and the now developing oil fields. I don't know just when Grandpa Bisett died. Edward, one of the older boys, had developed a pretty good teaming business in the Bradford area. Thomas had married and moved to Smethport, where he was operating a farm for his in-laws. 2 of the girls had jobs in Bradford, so the farm was sold after Grandpa Bisett died, and the family still about. Moved to Bradford on Congress Street. Charlie got a job in the oil business. Chris got a teaming job in the Olean area, eventually married his employer's daughter. Ed had John go to business school in Rochester, New York. Charles and Walter also went to St. Bonaventure's for a year or 2. Anna and Rose went to St. Elizabeth's Academy at Allegheny, and Anna was in Fredonia Normal when she was called home because her mother was very ill. Grandmother Bisett died. Anna had a friend who was a milliner, and she got a job learning the milliner's trade. She was doing some corresponding with a fellow who had taught school near Dallas Center and was struggling to complete his education for a medical degree. For every 2 years of teaching, he was able to go to medical school for 1 year. He got room and board for janitor work and some cash money for being a hostler for one of the school managers. This doctor had charge of the epileptic ward for the state penitentiary, which was connected to Columbus Medical College. This experience turned out to be most beneficial for Michael McCarey. One thing Dad always said, "The one thing I am most pleased about was that we proved epilepsy is an illness, not a crime." It took a long time to get that stupid law off the books. Rose got a job in a photo studio, and she became a very fine retoucher. Even after she was remarried, it was a nice source of income. Jane married George Ferris, a Civil War vet. Also, Mary married James Hannigan. Anna married Dr. Michael McCarey, to whom I am obliged for my existence. William died quite young. Also, Henry, who became tubercular. Walter always was somewhat frail and somewhat slow, but he became self-supporting. John became a horseman, a horse trader, and later an auto dealer. Charles became a boiler maker and oil operator. He became quite well off. Raised 2 families. His first wife died quite young, and he married again. They had 4 children and they have some offspring. Rose Cunningham had 2 boys. Her son James Cunningham has 2 daughters. Merrill Bisett, Tom's son, has a daughter. I don't know her married name. Ed Bisett has a son, Richard, who has a son and a daughter. The boy's name is Tom Bisett. He is a doctor, lives in the Boston area. I am trying to make a Bisett family tree, but don't really know how. In the 1830s, James Bisett came to America from Ireland. He is to have grown up in Dublin. Some time and place he met and married Mary Clark, who had a brother in Brooklyn, New York, and a sister, Jane, who married and came to live in Rochester, New York, Jane Richardson. When my sister Eugenia was in college in New York, Mother took me to visit her. We went up to visit Aunt Rosie Clark, the wife of Grandmother Bisett's brother. There were 2 grown young people living there, John and Mary Clark. John Clark died as a young man, never married. Mary married, but I don't remember the man's name. He was a widower with some children. My sister Jean kept in touch with the Clarks. I was a student at Fordham when Aunt Rosie died. Jean and I went to the funeral. They needed a pallbearer, so I had my first experience as a pallbearer. A few years before this, Mother had taken me to Rochester to visit Aunt Jane Richardson, who was quite feeble. She had a large family of children, but she lived in her own home with her unmarried daughter and son, Tom, who was a secretary for George Eastman, the Kodak man. Effie, the daughter, taught in a Catholic school in their neighborhood. My mother's brother, Uncle John Bisett, attended business school in Rochester, and I remember him saying, "We are related to all of Rochester." In some way or other, James Bisett and wife, Mary, are located in Elliottaville, New York. He was employed by the De La Ruche Trading Company, the same De La Ruche that gave the land to the Franciscans at Allegheny, where St. Bona's College is located. James Bisett was later located at the De La Ruche store in what is now East Bradford, Pennsylvania. Bisett acquired some acreage for himself at Dallas Center, about 3 miles east of Tarport, which was the going name for East Bradford. Quite a good stream comes down off the hills at this spot. A water wheel mill had been set up and a little town developed. Church and school, post office, Dallas Center. Sometime after the death of James Bisett, the family moved to Bradford, PA. Tom married and moved to near Smethport, Pennsylvania. He helped manage his wife's family farm. Her name was Mamie, and she was a milliner. They had a son, Merrill Bisett. He had a daughter. I don't know her name. William died as a young man, not married. In Bradford, Edward Bisett became the head man of the family. He started the Bisett Brothers Company Moving and Storage. It was a team operation at that time. Oil field teaming and other hauling. Ed married and raised a large family. Edward Jr., who went to Texas, had a family, 2 boys and 1 or 2 girls. His sister Josephine White raised a big family. I knew some of them, but do not recall all their names. Their names are not Bisett. Richard, Ed's second son, now lives in Bradford. He is old like me. Dick has lost his sight. Dick has one son who is a Dr. Bisett somewhere in the New England area. Eugene, the third son, had infantile paralysis as a child. He grew up but was quite delicate. He died sometime in his 20s, not married. Elizabeth, Betty, married a Dr. Lavin, so her children will be named Lavin. Christopher Bisett married and lived in Olean, New York. He ran a transfer business there. He had a son, Howard, who had a family. I don't know who or what gender. There was another son, Robert, who died as a teenager. 3 daughters, Loretta, Celestine, and I don't know the third daughter's name. Richard Bisett married and had 2 sons and a daughter, Harold Bisett, Lionel, and Pauline Scanlon. Harold had a son, who would be Bisett. I don't know about him. Lionel had no offspring. There are a lot of Scanlons about the Bradford area related to Pauline.